Photography is a medium that it makes you see. You never really see until you see through a camera, until you're a photographer. And once you start to appreciate photography and to see, then you actually appreciate nature more. You know, we take so much. We are human beings. We just abuse nature. But when you're taking nature photography or wildlife photography, it's really something it makes you really appreciate and really see what's out there. I think all nature photographers appreciate nature and want to contribute to save nature and to protect nature. And by learning more about it, by seeing more about it, by experiencing more about it, by being out in the field and get a picture of how amazing nature can be, that helps a lot.
We have just disembarked from the Pangolin Voyager, a sensational electric houseboat. And ordinarily it would be carrying avid photographers embarking on photo safaris here on the Chobe River. But instead, we've been cruising for the past 3 days up and down the Chobe River, all on solar and battery power. Now, whilst this episode does have all the core ingredients of any Everything Electric episode, amazing engineering, inspiring individuals, an unusual location, and no doubt a few bits and bobs from me, it is also really rather special. Because for me and videographer Louis, this has been a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and the experience that we've had here has just left us feeling really just thoughtful, I suppose. So, grab a beverage of your choice, settle in, and let us share this journey with you, and we'll check back in at the end. Welcome to the Everything Electric Show. Our 3 free YouTube channels on EVs and clean tech are funded by our fun-packed test drive-tastic events in Farnborough, London, the Southwest, the North, Melbourne and Sydney. Next up, Everything Electric Farnborough. And new for UK viewers, you can buy a battery electric vehicle or more at everythingelectric.store. Back to the episode. The Pangolin Voyager travels up and down the Chobe River, which is the natural border between Namibia, which I can see in front of me, and Botswana, which is over there. Now, these two countries are absolutely fascinating. Namibia, for example, is one of the most sparsely populated places on the planet. It's around 3.5 times the size of the UK, but has a population density just 1% of the UK's population density. Now, that is hardly surprising given that it's also one of the driest countries in southern Africa. Now, Botswana over there, this is actually the Chobe National Park, and the Chobe National Park is around the size of Belgium. It's also home to the largest population of elephants in Africa. In fact, some 162,000 elephants. But as well as elephants, there are hippos, buffalo, impalas, there are 400 different resident and migratory bird species, there's crocodiles. This is one of the richest wildlife corridors on the planet.
Chobe is just one of those very special places. I know the word special is overused, but there's not a lot of places in Africa where you can do game drives and boat cruises and have animals so relaxed. Half our animals here, I think, sometimes are on Prozac. They are so calm, so relaxed. They've never associated a boat with any danger or a boat has never been a threat. You've experienced this. We've been a few feet away from an elephant and they just continue with what they're doing. Elephants will never graze if they feel threatened. They won't have the kids around if they feel threatened. Our old boat did get a little bit old, but she was very uneconomical. She was like an old school boat, which sadly do pollute, which sadly use a lot of fuels, which is rusty. And you know, we have to practice what we preach. We're not here to contribute to damaging the environment. We want to help protecting the environment. So it was an easy choice. We have to upgrade to something more sustainable, something that's more eco-friendly. And then obviously, if we can get rid of the fossil fuels, this would be perfect. Only answer was natural electricity. Natural electricity, solar panels, beautiful sun rays, that's naturally out there, and we might as well harvest it. Come on, we're in Africa. Africa has got so much sun. We better use it.
Founders Guts and Toby turned to Southampton-based RAD Propulsion to engineer the electric drivetrains, and we were especially grateful to swap the River Hamble for the River Chobe as the backdrop to showcase these ultra-efficient propulsion systems.
RAD Propulsion started about 5 years ago. It was born out of a group of people that worked together in a very high-tech company making autonomous boats. And we wanted to do something mainly for the environment, but still with the high-tech theme. So we decided to make electric propulsion for boats, bringing forward all the technology that we developed in the autonomy world. And we started by designing from the propeller up. We took the advantages that you get with an electric motor and we applied that back through the drivetrain to the propeller, and it means we can have a really large blade area, high thrust propeller, taking full advantage of the torque and power profile that a motor delivers. Propeller design is a bit of a black art, but one of the well-known features of a propeller that gives it its efficiency is slow spinning, large blade area, large diameter, and those types of propellers they can't easily be turned by an internal combustion engine's power profile. Where we've got 100% torque and very high torque at low RPMs, we can put those big propellers on, spin them slowly and get maximum efficiency. We chose to use an axial flux motor, partly for its torque and power density, so it's a really, really small unit, but mainly because of its low RPM, or its high torque at low RPM. And it means we're spinning our motor much, much slower than an equivalent radial flux motor with the same power.
We've come away from the very glamorous bits of the boat to see how it all works. And I want to run you through a couple of numbers because we know ultimately that's what you care about. So in front of me here, we have the stationary energy storage. That's what's powering all of the boat, all of the things like air conditioning, lighting, cooking, what have you, that is being powered by here. And we have around 120 kilowatt hours of capacity. So to put that into perspective, that's kind of like 2 crossover SUVs worth of battery capacity. I think it's safe to say that those have probably been overspec'd. And if you come and have a look over here, you'll see precisely why. Now, on the roof of this incredible houseboat, there is 200 square meters of solar panels, or 80 panels. And right now, and it is 2:15, they're generating 22 kilowatts of power, and they were in fact still generating 22 kilowatts of power at 9:30 in the morning, and will be generating from about 6 in the morning. And what you can see here is that there is an amount going in to feed these stationary battery storage. There's also an indication on here to say what's coming from the grid. It is off-grid. There is nothing coming from the grid. And in fact, the grid symbol here represents the diesel generator that they do have on board. They do have to have that just in case anything were to go awry. However, since this has been operating since May, that generator has not been on once. Now, these batteries then supply the batteries supplying the drivetrain. So underneath our feet, there's around 61 kilowatt hours of battery. There's also 61 kilowatt hours at the back. So the 61 here is controlling the motors at the front, and 61 at the back controlling the motors at the back. Now, they think that they have probably overspec'd this entire system because it's very common for the cruise to finish with more power at the end than it did at the start. They're using tiny, tiny incremental amounts of energy. Below my feet, I can see one of the propeller and motor systems, and that's just one of 4 that exist on this boat. And there is a very specific to this boat design feature here, because this whole thing can be serviced just by picking up this grate and inspecting it from here. That is important because number one, we're on a big houseboat. It needs to, be as least disruptive as possible to any of the guests who are perhaps staying here. But secondly, and maybe more importantly, these waters are filled with crocodiles and hippos. So I'm sure whoever is looking at this would rather do this from the safety of the boat than from inside the water. Now, a little quirk of this is the 2 steering wheels. And to explain why we need these, I think we first need to understand just how enormous this boat is, because it is 35 meters long, it is 10 meters wide, and it can house 12 guests or up to 12 guests and 8 crew. It is 68 tons. This is a huge mass to move on the water. And as such, it needs 2 steering systems, because if you think about it, we have 2 propulsion systems at the front, and if we wanted to go that way, they would need to turn that way, but the 2 at the back would need to move in the opposite direction. That is one of those quirks that I can't let myself think about too much, or I will get myself totally confused. So whoever's driving this boat needs to be a little bit of an expert. Now, RAD have thought very carefully about the user experience in all of this because, we expect so much from our consumer electronics, our phones, for example. So it stands to reason that we should expect exactly the same experience from any kind of technology or any kind of digital and electric technology that we use. So the screens are completely intuitive. They can show you how much energy you're using, the kilowatts, the speed, the direction, etc., etc. And all of this can be updated over the air and monitored, of course, from the safety of Southampton.
We log all the data that you can imagine, all the control signals, all the feedback. And it enables us to look for trends in data across lots of different drives in lots of different circumstances. And it means you get this large data set and you can get very, very accurate conclusions drawn from that. So we actually go out on typical journeys with our customers. Here we came out to Africa last year and we went on some of the photo safaris with them. We logged the data of their existing journeys and then we were able to say exactly how much energy they were using on their internal combustion engines and then translate that to how much energy they would be using if they were to use our drives instead. We can spec the smallest battery that they need and they're not over-speccing and having to overspend on batteries. But in actual fact, most people are not using full power all the time. And by logging that data, we can show exactly what percentage of each power usage they're using at any time.
Namibia is a paradox. It has some of the world's richest renewable energy resources. Solar radiation here is 2 to 3 times stronger than it is in the UK, and the coastal and southern winds are truly phenomenal. And yet, it has some of the most expensive electricity in southern Africa, and 45% of the population don't have access to electricity. That means Namibia is ripe for a clean energy revolution. Between solar farms, wind farms, and green hydrogen, which the country hopes to produce in the millions of tonnes by 2030, could transform the economy. The mining sector accounts for 14% of GDP, and clean energy could welcome in a whole new era of industrialisation. Namibia's long-term plan, its Vision 2030, pulls all of this together, and that's its plan to build an industrialised, sustainable and prosperous nation, balancing economic growth, job creation, universal energy access, and of course, environmental stewardship. And clean energy projects and green hydrogen are central to that mission. But there's a catch. Large-scale infrastructure projects are more expensive to finance here than they are, say, in Europe and the US. And that's all because of the perceived risk, which means that investors want a higher rate of return, and that drives up costs. And if those financing hurdles could be overcome, Namibia could be a clean energy powerhouse. But it's not just economics. Namibia is getting hotter and drier faster than the global average. That means that droughts are increasing, water scarcity is rising, and rainfall is unpredictable. And that will shape Namibia's wildlife and landscape. Let's take impalas just as an example. The mothers time their births with the arrival of rainfall to ensure that they have enough grass to eat so that they can provide enough milk with enough nutrition to their calves. With droughts increasing and rainfall unpredictable, that becomes incredibly difficult to ensure that those calves have sufficient nutrition. So that's all to say that climate resilient, clean energy is not just smart, but it's absolutely essential for the environment, for livelihoods, and to ensure that there isn't food scarcity. So that there is obviously the big houseboat where we'll sleep and eat and all of that jazz. But to get up close and personal with the animals, we come out on this, which is the photo boat. And it is, of course, just a mini version of this big houseboat, although with the exception that instead of 4 drives, this has just 1. So underneath these seats here, there are 61 kilowatt hours of batteries. There's a 45 kilowatt rated power outboard motor. And this, the question that always comes up with electric boats is, well, what's the range? And it's kind of an irrelevant metric, because if we were just going to absolutely hoon it at 35 kilometers an hour, that probably would just mean that we'd only have about an hour and a half of time on this boat. But of course, that's not how you use these things. We're going to travel out to the animals, go really quickly, and then we're going to go much more quietly, much more slowly. And in that kind of use case, this will give you about 7 to 8 hours out on the water. But when it comes back, it can charge at 22 kilowatts from the solar on the houseboat. So it's constantly being topped up. So it's a perfect synergy between this enormous boat that has so much solar and using this perfectly for those trips out in the morning and trips out in the evening. And we're actually going to head out and see if we can try and find some hippos and elephants. The thing that is really striking about this is that it's just so quiet. And that feels incredibly appropriate. We're in this amazing landscape. It would feel totally inappropriate to be super loud with an engine sort of guzzling fuel as we go down the river, which can only be a very good thing when you are this close to a load of hippos, which we're just looking at just over there. So Pangolin Photo Safaris, as the name suggests, is all about photo safari. So this boat has been very much designed to be perfect for photographers. The fact that it's electric obviously really helps that, because you haven't got the same kind of vibrations that you'd expect in a petrol boat. We also have these huge open sides and these absolutely phenomenal gimbal arms. But the other thing is that where this is so quiet, of course, we're not disturbing the animals. And we've seen that really acutely today. We've been able to go up very, very closely to the animals without seemingly disturbing them. And in fact, the thing that's been surprising is hippos are very skittish. And we've arrived, they've had absolutely no drama at all. They've carried on going about their business. But then we did manage to frighten them, not by this boat, but because we dropped some spoons in the process of making some coffee. So it really does go to show how well this fits within its environment. Now, clearly, when it comes to electric propulsion, it's already so much more efficient than a gasoline equivalent. However, there are a couple of things that RAD has done that make this even more efficient. Notably, the size of the motor, or the size of the thing that's at the back of the boat. So over there, you can see the engine, and it is absolutely huge. It has an enormous profile, whereas this is very, very sleek. And that has an additional benefit of allowing a much greater angle of steering. Normally, that's just limited to 30 degrees. And that really, really increases the maneuverability of this boat. So the turning circle is astonishing. And actually, it just means that, we can get out of the way of animals, we can get out of the way of other boats. Super, super efficient.
UCL conducted a study with us last year where they ran two boats side by side, one with our drive on and one with a very modern petrol combustion engine on. Our drive was so much quieter. We didn't have the exhaust, which is the biggest source of noise on an outboard engine normally, but also the slow spinning prop meant that there was no noise from cavitation or ventilation that you would otherwise hear on a very small, fast spinning prop. We were fortunate enough to get a photograph back from a demo boat in the Antarctic from an expedition cruise running one of our drives, and a humpback whale breached right next to the boat where they were listening out for marine wildlife. The user experience of electric is so much better. It's so much nicer to drive an electric boat with no vibration, with instant torque and thrust, but it is expensive because of the batteries. If they use a boat a lot, if they're using it commercially, if they're using it in an environment like this where that user experience is really important, or if it's giving them cost savings in lower maintenance and certainly in lower fuel costs, then they only have to look at their bank and that tells them go electric. But yeah, it's a really proud moment to come out and just show that a small company from the UK can actually be making such a big impact over here in Africa.
So when we were first approached to come out here and to film this amazing electric boat, I thought it was a scam. I thought there was absolutely no way in a million years that we could ever do a shoot like this. And even when the company sent me videos of the Pangolin Voyager sailing down the Chobe River, I still thought that they were fake videos. And it turns out it's not a scam. It is absolutely real, and it is just as sensational as I thought it would be. And of course, that's in part because of the amazing wildlife, the lovely solar power, the battery-powered drivetrains, etc., etc. But it's also because this is just fundamentally a beautiful piece of architecture. And it's the product of Guts, who's the co-founder of Pangolin Photo Safaris. It's the product of his imagination. He is an engineer by background, but clearly he just has an unreal eye for incredible design. And things like the one swooping bit of metal from front to back, that is just craftsmanship in its absolute element. But it's also what brings all of this together, because of course that shape creates the shape of a pangolin. And Pangolin Photo Safaris have a huge conservation arm to what they do, protecting these incredibly endangered species that is the pangolin. They're the only mammal with keratin scales, and they also have no teeth, just very, very strong stomach muscles. But it's those keratin scales which form this trade and, has to be stopped to protect this really endangered species.
Pangolins is a highly endangered species, and I know there's a lot of love being given to rhinos, and rightfully so. Rhinos are also very highly endangered, but I don't think pangolins getting the amount of love they should get and the amount of attention they should get. Pangolins are even more endangered than rhino. There's so little known about them. And doing our photography safaris and having our accommodation, the houseboat and the hotel, there's a percentage of your night fee, your bed levies that's going for Pangolin.Africa, which is then putting directly in the hands of people protecting rehabilitation. We are having our own little rehabilitation center where we're providing support with X-ray machines, with building new hospital pangolin, if you could say so, having an area that they can be peacefully rehabilitated. And there's a lot of support from our own guests for this. Every year we're running a photo competition that people can enter and submit their best images. In the old days there was an entry fee, but now we charge a donation. So you can donate anything from a teat to a tracker. And it's unbelievable the support we get from our guests, which just shows you photography and nature photographers, they do really care about the environment, and they really want to put their money where they know it's going to be taken, it's going to be used properly.
This camera is not mine, and I am quite intimidated by just how big it is and also how expensive it is. I'm so aware of how expensive it is. And the reason that I've got this is because typically on these trips, they get loads of budding photographers, either people who are just really passionate about it, know nothing, or, actually some real professionals as well. And the guides at Pangolin Photo Safaris teach you how to use these amazing cameras and capture incredible scenes. And so obviously this boat has been designed to make that very easy. These huge windows offer seamless access to the wildlife outside. And just to show you how close you get, about 3 meters that way is a big pile of elephant poo. But anyway, you can take the pictures from here and then come in here to this rather lovely and air-conditioned editing suite. And so in here, the guides would teach you how to use Photoshop or Lightroom and, make sure that you can whittle down the gabillion of pictures that you inevitably would have taken to those ones that you're super, super proud of. Periodically, I've been coming in here just to have a look at what's going on with the solar panels and the batteries, like a proper net zero dad. And right now, it is just coming up to 9 o'clock. We've been cruising for 3 hours and we left with 58% battery of the 61 kilowatt hours at the front, 61 kilowatt hours at the back. So now we're on 57%. And because we've got 18.67 kilowatts coming from the solar, actually the batteries are now charging. So I'm pretty sure that we're going to finish the cruising today with more than we started with. So I was just in there doing my periodic checking of how much solar gain there is. And then you come out here and there's a little herd of elephants coming down for a drink of water. And it's hard to put into words just how incredible and amazing this is. And it's genuinely just a bit emotional, I think.
It's possible. It's possible to live fancy. Yeah, we are elephants in the background, but we've got aircon going. We've got lovely, proper furniture, and we are comfortable. And I think the human race are so dependent on their own comforts that they would do anything to be comfortable. But it's possible to be comfortable and live classy and fancy, but do it in a sustainable way. It's so much wastefulness out there that people just throw away. That's not necessary. We can live happily together with Mother Nature, and we don't need to waste and abuse her.
Here on the Everything Electric show, we really pride ourselves in showcasing clean energy solutions in extreme edge cases or geographies or scales, all in an effort to show you that these solutions are pragmatic, accessible, and cost-effective in everyday normal situations. And there's no question that the Pangolin Voyager does that in spades. I mean, it's operating at 40 degrees C and it's not even the peak of summer yet. The supply chain is pretty much peaked, flying over from the UK. There are animals in this water that, if aggravated, could bite some of the materials. It shows that these things are pragmatic, and not only that, that they can be beautiful and beautifully efficient. But more than that, I think this project shows us something much, much more important. Coming here, we see that, perhaps it isn't brilliant to blast a hippo in the face with diesel. And that's so important because in this day and age, I think clean energy has become so laced with politics, and it's annoying and it's boring and it's worrying. And an elephant, they don't care about our politics. They care about having enough water and enough food to feed their herd. And ultimately, that's what it boils down to. It really is as simple as that. Let us know what you think in the comments. Please do like and subscribe. And if you have been, thank you for watching.
Now visit electricvehicles.expert, where you can follow everything electric and keep current with Clean Technica, The Driven, Electrek, and many more.